And in a new poll, 60% of people said they still don't think nurses are paid enough. That's after nurses in England rejected a 5.5% raise from the government in a symbolic vote last month. As a result of the latest pay offer, newly qualified nurses will take home just under £30,000, while a more senior nurse will have a starting salary of more than £37,300. But the Royal College of Nursing says nurses have seen their pay fall by a quarter in real terms since 2010, and nobody thought nurses were overpaid in 2010. So let's start with you, Bobby, on this one. I mean, you might think it's one of those no-brainers, you know, nurses, angels, particularly when you're very sick and very unwell and worried as hell. Should they get more money?
So why do people become nurses? So these are people, I think, that when they're younger, they're probably more caring towards others, they're compassionate. So they enter a profession, in fact, a vocation that's very caring. But ultimately, you still need to be paid fairly for the work that you're doing. And for the past 14 years, sadly, under this Conservative government, they've seen, as you mentioned, a quarter, 25%. Can you imagine that? A quarter of your pay in real terms, your ability to spend in the economy is cut by a quarter. And it's having an impact because in the last few years, we're looking at in terms of nursing students, 21% fewer people are applying for nursing courses at university. So we're seeing an impact. People are voting with their feet. People thinking, actually, I do want to care, I am compassionate, but actually, I can't afford to become a nurse or I can't afford to stay to become a nurse. Yes. So clearly, we're not paying them enough.
So, Andrea, is it a situation where people are being penalised financially for being caring individuals who want to do something good for people in pain and people who are sick and scared?
Look, I mean, I think that rather than giving it to the train drivers, they obviously should have given it to the nurses instead. However, look, I come from a different viewpoint. Both of my parents had awful care before they died in the NHS. My sister had amazing care when she was in a coma at a different hospital, but it really is a tale of two cities. I mean, my mum was soaked in her own urine day in, day out for 6 weeks, and we're not talking about, you know, necessarily being run off the feet.
Your mum, are we?
My mum was my life. I don't have any political heroes. My mum and dad was my hero. And soaked in her own urine, I was changing bed sheets, and there'd just be gossiping on the nurses' station whenever I went there. And this is seeing it with my own eyes. And so, if anything, I think any pay across the country should be performance related.
How do you pay nurses on performance, though?
Well, you get patient feedback as well. I mean, in any industry, you get good and bad at their jobs, and I've seen awful care with my own parents, and it's very sad. Look, there's some amazing ones. I mean, the ones with my sister, gosh, I've got a wonderful video when she learnt to walk again and all the nurses and doctors were the tears in their eyes clapping her. That is, oh, wow. I wish every nurse and doctor across the country could be like that. It was emotional. But you get good and bad, and I wish my parents, they'd probably be alive if they'd had better care, Vanessa.
All right, let's go to the lines on this one. Sharon's in Staffordshire. Hi, Sharon. Should nurses get more money, do you think?
Absolutely. Nurses do deserve good pay. Now, Bobby's got it completely right, but the lady on the panel, I'm just appalled at what she's saying.
Have you lost your parents?
Do not stand.
Have you lost your parents?
I have indeed. I have indeed.
What, with awful care? With awful care? Did your parents have awful care?
Let me tell you, nurses do not stand at the nurses' station gossiping. They work so hard.
Well, I did it. I'm certainly not a liar.
And a nurse with a degree, a nurse that's done 3 years training, and she only gets £17 an hour. She gets. It's not bad nursing care. It's probably short-staffed, to be honest. It's probably because they were short-staffed. But nurses do deserve a lot more money. They take
I said I'd rather it go to them than train drivers. Did you hear my initial comment?
Well, yeah, you've got that right, actually, yes. I'm sorry about it. You did say that. But nurses do deserve more money, to be honest, because nurses have taken on roles that doctors should be doing. They do a lot of the things that the doctors should be getting, yet the doctors get 22% pay rise. What do nurses get? 5%. And they wonder why.
No, I agree with you with that, because look at the junior doctor strikes. Look at what they was asking for pay rises, yet the nurses is a low one. So I completely agree with you there.
But one of the things
Sharon,
I wonder whether you agree with this, Sharon, that nurses, because of such short staffing, they're in this awful sort of vortex of very, very low morale, because they're trying to do the job not just of themselves, but of somebody else, and somebody else.
Some go to
constantly
agency
trying to catch up with you know, the kind of gap left by very low staffing. And so it's a kind of treadmill of difficulty on a daily basis. Most people would just say, I can't do this, and walk out. Have you seen that happening, Sharon?
Yes. Yes, the morale is so low, it's unreal, it really is. And I just think nurses are going to just keep leaving and leaving and leaving, and then they won't have any nurses at all, to be honest, because the way things are going, it is so appalling and shocking. It really is. And I don't know how much longer nurses can put up with this. I really don't.
Sharon, thank you very much indeed. And the question is, how long will they put up with it? Let's talk to Julie on the line in Somerset. Hi, Julie. Morning.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning, panel. How are you?
We're all fine, thank you. But we don't need nursing care right now. But if we did, we would bless the name of every nurse who came to our aid. So tell me something. Do they need more money, do you think?
Yes, we do. I became a nurse at 18. I stayed in nursing till I was 63.
Right.
And I was always considered, once you're qualified, you've got a lot of responsibility, get on with it. You should have a higher pay rise when you qualify, because it is a very demanding job. Let's have nurses paid for a decent day's work with a decent salary.
Talk to me a little bit, Julie, about being a nurse as the years unfolded. Did it get more difficult? Was there more understaffing? And were you under more pressure to step up and do things that formerly doctors used to do, and suddenly they were considered within the nurses' repertoire? Did your life get harder?
Yes, it did, especially after the time I was about 30 and I had about 5 or 6 years experience, because I was an operating theatre sister. It was, Julie, can you do this? Julie, can you do that? Yeah. You know, and that's nursing, and that's the communication level between doctors and nurses. Mm-hmm. And you should work as a team, as far as I'm concerned. But I can't understand why doctors got a 22% pay rise and the nurses got almost nothing.
Definitely.
And the idea that as Andrea suggested, nurses should be paid on a performance-related basis.
Not just nurses. I mean,
well, everybody, but we're talking about nurses.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Do you think that could possibly practically be applied, Julie? Could you have been assessed on performance, do you think?
Well, we were always assessed on performance as soon as you qualify. As soon as you qualify, you want to specialise in something. Like I went into operating theatres. You were assessed nearly every 3 or 4 months when you were appraised at the end of your allocation. It's always been like that.
And those true angels who are doing amazing, like they did with my sister, then they deserve even better pay. That's what I think. But than the ones who neglected my parents.
And when you say your parents were being neglected,
oh my God.
did you try taking it up with the hospital authorities? And what happened as a result?
Nothing. I mean, look, this is how bad it was. My dad had MRSA and he caught it in hospital. He went in for a routine operation to drain fluid off his lungs.
Oh, this is a picture of your dad looking incredibly
debonair.
Yeah,
he was very dapper,
delightful,
very handsome. And literally trainee doctors practised on him for 2.5 hours on a 20-minute procedure. The cleaners kept the mop buckets in the operating room. And that week, there was 6 people dying of MRSA. There wasn't the infection control, and my dad got so weak he couldn't feed himself, and I walked in, he'd be covered in his food, and it was awful, Vanessa.
I mean, I can see you suffering even as you're thinking about it.
I still get emotional.
I remember the days. Do you remember when the late Claire Rayner, who was so delightful on television, everybody loved her. She was a nurse.
She was.
Do you remember her saying that she would do absolutely anything should her husband fall ill to keep him out of hospital? Anything. So exactly. You're not alone in what you're saying, but I don't know whether it's the nurses who are to blame and who should be penalised. Let's go to Kathy, who's on the line in Lancashire. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Morning. Good to talk to you. I've been in that hospital for decades, and I've seen good and bad. And some of them, they don't answer the buzzers. There was a lady in once, a very elderly lady, and she had the cot sides up, and she was climbing over the cot sides, and the nurses were just busy, talking, chatting to one another, and not answering the buzzers.
And so you feel what? You feel that all nurses should be penalised for the nurses who aren't on the ball and aren't taking any notice of the patients, that they don't deserve more money?
Absolutely not. But how do you monitor it, Vanessa?
Well, it's meant to be monitored by, you know what everyone's going to say, where are the matrons, aren't they? When in the old days, there'd be a matron in charge. We all remember what she used to look like, starched uniform, and she would be keeping everything ship-shape and making absolutely certain there was none of this not answering the bells, and nobody would be covered in food or sitting in their own urine. And people will say, bring back the matrons, Bobby.
Yeah, I think, again, it's about systematic underinvestment in our healthcare. and our nursing. Because if there were enough nurses, they wouldn't feel under pressure, they wouldn't be doing 2 or 3 jobs at the same time. Again, the removal of the matron-type figures. So I think, again, it does require investment, probably requires borrowing, maybe higher taxes, but I think most people would acknowledge we need a better healthcare system. So I think investing in it...
But we've invested billions into the health service and it's not improving outcomes. I mean, when I studied economics, I looked at pounds per capita spend with healthcare outcomes, and it isn't about the money you put in, it's about how it's used and it going to the right places. And that is the issue, it's not going to the right places.
I mean, investment isn't going to make a particular nurse answer a buzzer rather than stop talking.
Exactly.
That's not going to make any difference at that level. Let's go to Bernard in Norwich. Hello, Bernard, thanks for ringing. What do you think about nurses and pay?
Oh, please, let's be honest and faithful. They do a brilliant job. I know several nurses, they work 24/7, they don't stop. Some of them don't even have a break. I've been in hospital and they're snacking because they can't go to breaks, they haven't got no one to cover themselves. So be fair, when that lady in the middle, I don't know
Andrea.
who she is, she's not living the real world. Because they all the medical profession, our doctors, everyone do their share. And I wish everyone else done their share.
Well, don't you think I've had a reality check? I've lost both parents and witnessed personally awful care. You say I'm not living in the real world. Is that not the real world? I've had constituents. I've been representing 80,000 people for 9 years. I've seen some great cases, but I've seen some appalling cases. I've even gone undercover in a local hospital for a constituent before to actually troubleshoot with the issue.
I mean, the accusation that politicians aren't in the real world, I think if you're sitting on an NHS ward watching your parents dying, that's pretty real, Bernard. Doesn't get much more real than that. But thank you so much for ringing. Good to hear from you.